Shocking twist, Ghana says they're gone, lawyers say they're still there. On September 10, 2025, news broke in West Africa. Ghana's president announced that 14 people deported by the United States had already gone home. He said 13 Nigerians were sent by bus and 1 Gambian was flown by plane. Hours later, lawyers in the United States said this was not correct. They filed court papers saying 4 Nigerians were still in Ghana. The two sides gave different stories, and the disagreement quickly became a bigger issue. This report follows the facts about what really happened. It shows what Ghana's leaders said, what the U.S. lawyers claimed, and what judges are now examining. The story matters because it involves government actions, people's safety, and laws that cross national borders. The United States has been removing migrants for many years. In some cases, they go back to their home country. In other cases, they are sent to a third country that agrees to accept them. This policy is now being used more often. Ghana recently became one of those nations. On September 10th, President John Dramani Mahama confirmed that a group of West African migrants had landed in Ghana. He said they were not staying in Ghana but would instead be moved on. The group included 13 Nigerians and 1 Gambian. According to the president, the Gambian was placed on a flight back to Banjul, and the Nigerians were transported by bus to their country. Ghana presented the operation as complete. Not long after, lawyers in the United States gave a different account. They said that 4 Nigerians from the same group were not in Nigeria. They were still in Ghana. Legal filings explained that these men faced possible danger if returned to Nigeria. The filings claimed that some had already been granted protections under U.S. law, which normally prevents deportation to places where there is risk of torture or persecution. This created a clear conflict. Ghana insisted the deportees had left. The lawyers insisted 4 had not. Both sides gave firm statements, leaving questions about who was telling the truth. In Washington, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan reviewed the case. She asked the U.S. government for updates about the 4 Nigerians. She wanted to know what steps had been taken to keep them safe and to stop Ghana from moving them further. The judge pointed out that if these men did in fact have legal protection, then deporting them could break U.S. law. She pressed the government to respond quickly. The lawyers also raised concerns about how the men were treated during transport. They said the migrants were restrained in straitjackets for many hours on the flight. They also reported that the men were held in poor conditions after arriving in Ghana. They argued that these actions violated their rights. Ghana denied the claims. Officials said there was no camp and no mistreatment. They repeated that the men were no longer in Ghana and had already gone to their countries. The case has drawn attention to international law. One major rule is called non-refoulement. It says no one should be sent to a place where they may face torture, persecution, or death. Lawyers for the migrants say this principle is being broken. They argue that the U.S. is using Ghana as a middle step to get around legal limits. Once the men are outside U.S. soil, it becomes harder to stop their removal. Ghana, for its part, says it is only helping return them to their homes and has no role beyond that. Third country deportations are not new. The United States has signed agreements with several nations to receive migrants who are not citizens of those nations. Ghana has now joined that list. Legal experts say the practice allows the U.S. to move faster than the courts because once the migrants are out of the country, legal protections are harder to enforce. The concern is that people who should be protected could end up in dangerous situations. Government spokespeople in Ghana have stuck with their story. Felix Kwakie Ofosu repeated the president's words, saying all 14 were gone. At the same time, Nigerian and Gambian officials said they had not been told in advance. They had no official notice that the men were being returned through Ghana. This lack of communication raised even more questions about the process and about how transparent it was. Reporters from the Associated Press tried to check the story. They could not confirm where the 4 Nigerians were. They could not find them in Ghana, but they also could not prove they were in Nigeria. For the Gambian, the case was clearer. His lawyer confirmed that he had reached Banjul. For the Nigerians, the facts remained uncertain. Human rights groups began to speak out. They said this case shows a dangerous pattern. If migrants can be moved first to another country, they may lose their right to fight the case in U.S. courts. Once they are gone, the chance to appeal or ask for protection may be lost. Groups pointed to past cases where deported people ended up arrested or tortured after being returned. They warned that the same risk exists now. Judge Chutkan's involvement shows the seriousness of the matter. She asked direct questions. Where exactly are the 4 Nigerians? Did Ghana send them on to Nigeria, as claimed? What did the U.S. government do to make sure they were safe? The court is waiting for full answers. The case is also bigger than just 14 people. It could set an example for how deportations through third countries will work in the future. If Ghana's statements are taken at face value, then migrants could be moved quickly and without much outside review. If the lawyer's claims are proven, it will show that there are major gaps and risks in the system. At the center is trust. Governments must trust each other to respect rights. Migrants must trust that they will not be sent into danger. If either side breaks that trust, the system falls apart. For now, Ghana says all 14 are gone. U.S. lawyers say 4 Nigerians are still inside Ghana. Reporters cannot confirm either side fully. The truth remains unclear. The court in Washington continues to examine the case. The story has spread across newsrooms and legal circles. It involves 2 governments, several legal teams, and international rules that affect many others besides these 14. That is why this case is still being followed closely and why it remains one of the most pressing deportation disputes of 2025. Stay with us for full details, and if you want more clear updates on world news stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the latest reports.